let me just swap to just chatting, and we'll keep going. Okay. Captain Delusion made a video on the cat person who unblurred his image. Wait, is that the one I think it is? Oh, that's a different one. No, that's a completely different video I thought it was. Also, the timestamp you sent me was literally the end of the video, so it just tried to autoplay the next one. Anyway, video time!
This is the face of one of the most recognizable, if not the most recognizable, if not the most recognizable person in the video game industry.
Be quiet.
And for a good reason. Chances are you already know most of his greatest achievements, such as making Half-Life, creating Steam, and so on. But this video won't be talking about that, at least in the way you'd expect. I'm not going to talk about the history of creating the games. You've heard it a million times before. I want you to take a look on Gabe Newell.
Wait, do we want the video louder or do we want it quieter? I'm
from a different
little bit higher.
perspective,
Okay.
a more personal one. The year
How's
is
that?
1980. Technology is rapidly developing, and Gabe Newell enrolls at Harvard to study computer science. He never
Ooh.
finished it though, as just 3 years
Imagine being one of those people studying computer science back in the 80s. Like, you're in a position where nothing, like basically nothing is discovered at this point. You're basically, like what you're doing is you are studying chemistry when people first discovered what, how chemical reactions work, like any sort of like basic reactions work. Like you're at the beginning of biology. Like you're at the start of a field, right? Like I can only imagine what, like, because yes, like the computer technically been around for a long time at this point, and depends on how you define computer, because calculators are technically computers, but really like computers being like a thing that like is typically considered a computer, that wasn't until like the 40s. So being in computer science in the 70s and 80s, like this is still early mainframes. This is the very beginning of like personal computers. 80s was early, but not so early. Right, but like it's like that start of personal computers. It's computers moving out of being something that is only in institutions. Like it was such a perfect time to be in that space. Computers are still slow, but people don't really know anything that computers can, like, that theoretically would be possible with a computer yet.
years later, Gabe was convinced to go work for Microsoft by their head of sales, so he dropped out. Essentially, this was the Gabe's start. Microsoft by their head of sales, so he dropped out. Essentially, this was the Gabe's starting point in his career. In Microsoft, he was one of the people working on the first 3 Windows systems. And he was quite influential in the process. A more important event took place in 1995. Gabe Newell was fond of the game Doom, released in 1993. MS-DOS was the dominant operating systems for PCs at that time, and Gabe saw the potential of both Doom as a source of entertainment and Windows as a possible platform for games. So, Gabe decided to lead the development of a port of Doom for the next Windows release. His team developed new libraries and APIs that allowed developers to achieve better performance and graphics on the platform. Some of these libraries eventually evolved into DirectX, which you might know.
Jesus fucking Christ. Gabe was there from the start, wasn't he? Holy shit!
As the thing you install today before launching games on a fresh system. With the Windows 95 release in late 1995, Doom was successfully ported by Gabe and his team. This whole set of events motivated Microsoft to start positioning Windows as the go-to platform for developers.
Wait, no, we have to. I need to find that. We cannot move on without seeing what that is. Bill Gates Doom ad. Yep, found it. Okay, I don't care about your text. Oh my god. Apologies for the... That's not even 240p. That is just fucking... I don't know what this is. ASCII would look better. It's the guy.
These games are getting really realistic.
It's Bill Microsoft. The games are getting realistic, are they? Imagine, okay. How many of you, like, I don't know how many of you are, like, much older than me, but, like, I started gaming when my first console was the PS2. And I think by that point you could realistically say that gaming was starting to look fairly realistic. I can't even imagine being someone who grew up from the start of gaming. Like, you know, you go from you like these, like, very simple pixel art games on, like, you know, an Atari. You like, the first, like, realistic quote-unquote graphics people saw were in an arcade, and now they were starting to move into the home. So this is 95 here. I can't even imagine calling Doom look like a realistic looking game.
Next year, I might even play in the big Doom tournament. You might wonder what I'm doing here. Well, I'm getting kind of an inside look at some of these new games. I think you'll be amazed at all the new games we're going to show you here.
So many games
this evening. We've got a few key points to remember. First, Windows 95 is the game platform.
Well, it's not necessarily showing Ori to people, right? Because remember, it's showing that it's an actual game, right? Because you can render things on a PC that looked like that. What year? Yeah, so 95 was the same year as Toy Story 1. And Toy Story 1 looks fucking insane for 1995. It obviously has problems. Shadows are weird in some places, stuff like that. But showing that as an actual game that you can play? Yeah. If you showed them Persona, they would hang you. Yeah. Like a video, yeah. You could do a lot of fancy stuff with video even back then. But like an actual playable thing, if you showed them a fucking modern computer, they'd be like, what the fuck is this thing? Why are there so many lights on it?
Whether it's the best performance, the best setup, the best integration.
Show them Dead or Alive volleyball. Now we're cooking.
And with the toolkits we're putting together, we're going to make sure people are very focused on Windows 95. DOS, it's been impossible to install the games. Hard for the developers, hard for the users, tough support problems, and nowhere near the graphics performance we're getting today with our DirectX APIs. A second key point is that we think the PC really is the entertainment platform for the future.
Remember when, like, tech companies were really down to earth like this? Like, this is, like, Bill Gates is still kind of just a guy at this point. Like, yeah, he's running, like, Microsoft at this point was already starting to become a fairly big company. But, like, it wasn't anything like it would be in a couple of years. Like, it wasn't anything like it would be when XP came out. So he's still kind of just a dude. And it doesn't feel, like, weird and corporate-y. Yeah, this is kind of cringe. But, like, it's the kind of cringe that a nerd from the 90s would do.
We're going to have the best performance.
We also used to have booth babes. True.
And do multiplayer games. Lots of new...
Actually, to be fair, a lot of Chinese studios do still have booth babes. If I believe correctly, Wukong, I want to say it was like Wukong or something like that, had booth babes at some conference.
New peripherals, and the improvements just keep coming. Our commitment is to make the tools, to make the platform better and better.
Yeah.
Don't interrupt me. And A third point is I really want to thank all the third parties who've made this possible. The reaction of the game community has been fantastic. I will be showing you here 75 new games, all of which will be coming out by the end of the year. We really believe that with their help, we'll be able to clean up this DOS mess and get everything focused on Windows. And it's our commitment to keep moving ahead and doing that.
Yeah, it's endearing.
Well, I better go work on cleaning up this neighborhood here. So I'm off, but don't forget, when you're trying out our haunted house, don't lose your head. See you.
Oh, I kind of miss Microsoft from that era.
And by the end of the 90s, it was the default operating system for any type of gaming. Now, Gabe could of course just stay at Microsoft, get some juicy promotions and live a great life, having already put his name in history as the father of modern PC gaming. But, as we all know, that wasn't
Look at him! Look at him! What is he? Probably in his, like, 20s? Maybe 30 there?
Gabe didn't do all this for nothing. He knew that gaming was going to be much bigger than anyone could expect, and PC gaming specifically was going to be a huge market. Following that feeling,
Wait,
Gabe...
when did he become fat? Because he wasn't there. He's like a fairly normal looking dude here.
And PC gaming specifically was going to be a huge market. Following that feeling, Gabe leaves Microsoft with one of his friends and founds Valve to try and make games of his own, perfectly knowing it was not the
Mid-30s,
rational decision, and instead was a big
He got
gamble.
married? That would actually make sense. Yeah, you know what? You might be onto something.
Valve had a couple of paths to go, with the obvious one being making some kind of clone of Doom, Quake,
Right.
or any other big game at the
Boom!
time.
Yeah,
Gabe,
exactly,
however,
yeah.
had a different
That would
vision
work.
for games. While being inspired by Doom, he didn't want to make a generic arena shooter. He wanted to keep the dynamic, but also introduce storytelling into shooters. He wanted people to live through a serious experience, rather than just having small fun running around and fragging with friends. The game that Valve ended up making, Half-Life, was probably the shooter game with the biggest emphasis on story out of all of its competitors.
I've played Black Mesa, but I honestly do want to go back and play original Half-Life just to see what original Half-Life was like.
Which was quite a bold play. I believe Half-Life was very influential in showing people that games can be big and they can be deep. Perhaps Half-Life was even much closer to a movie rather than a regular game at the time. And if we look at the gaming industry today, you could describe most of the single-player games in such a way. Gabe knew games...
Yeah, shit. The problem is a lot of modern single-player games are focused too much on being a movie and not an interactive experience.
Can be something big, and he proved his point, with Half-Life being a big success and still being considered one of the best video games ever made. The period from 1998 to 2003 saw Valve buying out rights
Movie
for many
games,
popular
exactly,
mods,
yeah.
mainly made for Half-Life. Those were the Team Fortress Classic and, of course, Counter-Strike. While Gabe isn't the man behind those two games, he still was the one who saw potential in them, and in the end acquired them to support the development. CS went to become, arguably, the most
this is something that Valve has always done. Like, we can talk about what they're doing today with, hiring Proton developer. Like, DXVK started as a combination, I've talked about this before, combination of two things. The DirectX 11 stuff, that is from a developer who wanted to play Nier. That was their sole reason for doing so. They wanted to play Nier on Linux. And then the DirectX 8 and 9 stuff, that was based on someone who went to a conference, said they were going to do it, and then someone told them they couldn't do it. So basically to say fuck you, they went and did it. And then eventually they both got hired at Valve. And they also Valve hiring like KDE people as well through Paladin is the new one.
Shooter game at the time, having a lasting influence on many games we all play today. However, I don't want to put too much emphasis on that, as we have something way bigger in common. It was important for context though.
Yeah,
Throughout
Tech
the
Paladin,
90s
yeah.
And when running Valve, Gabe Newell was very familiar with the issues PC gaming had at the time. People were striving to create and play, producing mods, starting from levels for Half-Life to whole games such as CS, sharing it among communities and gathering together to check it all out. There were two massive issues though, distribution and cheating. You have to remember that the internet wasn't widely accessible. Everything was shared through floppy disks and CDs. People gathered at LAN parties to exchange files and
Man, I wish I could have experienced just some, like, just what gaming would have been, was like back in the early 2000s. Like, I was very young back then. So I was playing games. Like, I kind of wish I was in a situation where, you know, I could have seen what these giant LAN parties like this would have been like.
maybe check out some mods together. Updating such content, both mods for the community and the games themselves for the developers, wasn't that easy of a task. You couldn't just download an update. People had different versions of games, different versions of mods for different versions of games, and on top of all that, anti-cheats were basically non-existent for most games. Gabe wanted...
That's true, but also you had a lot of, back then, because there was no anti-cheat, you also had people GMing. So... yes, there was cheaters, but any good server is going to have people that were moderating it fairly actively.
To solve this, in 2002, Valve started developing Steam, a centralized platform for their games, where they could push updates for everyone, as well as provide a place for modders to publish their creations and update them with ease. The internet still wasn't that popular at the time, but Gabe knew it would become big. And now I want you to fully grasp this. Listen in. The internet wasn't that big yet, but Gabe has already foresaw a future where all the games are distributed online. He knew that Steam was the future of game distribution. In 2003, Steam was released, partially solving the problems we talked about earlier. Valve's anti-cheat was also developed, being one of the first anti-cheats that could automatically identify and ban cheaters with no human input. But Steam wasn't widely used, as once again, the internet still was a luxury for most people. A year later, Gabe is going to take a huge gamble. The one that probably no one else could take on his spot. I believe this is one of the most influential points in the whole gaming history, and to me, one of the most mind-blowing business decisions ever made.
Was that when he opened it up as a store? Half-Life 2.
After the success of Half-Life 1, the sequel was being developed shortly after. As you probably know, it was a huge success, and is also considered to be one of the best games ever made.
So
there is a really big twist though. Gabe Newell has made the decision to make Half-Life 2 accessible exclusively through Steam. You could still buy the physical version, but to play the game, you had to activate it on Steam via a CD key. Otherwise, it wouldn't launch. Half-Life 2 was of course a very important release for Valve, deciding their whole future as they were close to being bankrupt when releasing it. And
that is such a fucking crazy thing to do back in the early 2000s. Like, nobody's using your platform, but you're like, I know this game is going to be so fucking big that people are going to install it anyway. Like, that's what Ubisoft thinks a lot of their games are for Uplay. And that's what EA's thought a lot of their games are for EA. Like, with, to be fair, Epic kinda did get it with Fortnite, right? Like, Fortnite has made people use Epic. But the other platforms, people just don't really care about. Also, Blizzard they got away with it for a while, but then Blizzard just kept producing shit, and now people don't care about Blizzard as much.
Had just forced his player base to somehow get internet access to play their new game. People, of course, were not really happy with this. Many fans had to go through several layers of hell, bringing their whole systems to friends' houses to use their internet and activate the CD key. Luckily, you didn't need a constant connection to play the game. It was only needed to activate it once. Then you could switch Steam to offline mode and play the game, although the offline mode also wasn't always a smooth experience. Nonetheless, the decision was made. Half-Life 2 did require online activation, and it did work out in the end, because Half-Life 2 was too big of a game to...
So I guess you could argue this is probably the first, if not the first, one of the first forms of DRM. Because, I don't know, technically a CD key is DRM as well. but it's... I don't know. It depends on how you want to define DRM. Even back in... What DRM existed back then? Like, I know CD keys have been a thing for a long time. I guess in some cases games did have copy protection as well. Okay, how about this? Would it be fair to say it's one of the first online DRM? I think that might be fair to say. One of the first... Okay, yeah, sure, okay.
Not check out, and people did go through all the lengths to be able to play it. This showed developers and publishers the advantages of online distribution, even when the whole idea of it didn't cross their minds yet, or just wasn't seriously considered. As we all know today, for many, having Steam on their PC is as essential as having a browser. It is the biggest gaming platform that no one can surpass, and that will only grow more as the time goes. Physical distribution is very close to its death, and mods for games...
Have you heard about, Xbox wanting to support Steam on their next console? There's been rumors of this going on.
Of course, have never been as accessible. By 2009, Steam was somewhat commonly used in the gaming community. However, there is still one part of Steam that we haven't discussed yet. As many of you already know, Team Fortress 2 is a fairly successful hero shooter
a little bit, yeah.
In 2009. The sequel was fully developed by Valve rather than being a bought-out mod, and it was much more focused on having fun rather than being competitive, so it was a good ground for testing new concepts and features for online games. A big part of modding during that time consisted of community-made 3D models, replacing guns, characters, or whatever else you could imagine in already existing games. Obviously, not many mods were that high quality or actually fit the game, or could even be something actually serious due to limitations of modding itself. Gabe has decided to try and change that. In 2010, Team Fortress 2 receives an update called the Manconomy, featuring the online gaming's first ever skin system. You had item drops and matches, and you could also buy them directly from Valve's official store. Later on...
Wait, no, wasn't MapleStory doing... I thought MapleStory was doing it earlier. Or was MapleStory just doing pay-to-win stuff earlier? I know MapleStory is to blame for a lot of the problems we have with microtransactions, but I don't know if they're doing cosmetics at the start.
The crate system was also created, where you could receive crates in a match,
MapleStory was gotcha. Okay, fair.
Then buy a key from Valve and open the crate to get some kind of item. The skins themselves didn't have a formal rarity system though, they were only classified by their type. In 2012 though, CSGO also had an update called Times Deal, which introduced gun skins into the game. There, Valve for the first time added a rarity system, with some skins being harder to get.
And this is how we get kids into gambling!
Compared to others. The Steam Marketplace was also introduced shortly before the CSGO update, where players could buy, trade and sell their items. This way, Valve were the first ones to fully add such type of monetized customization to their online games, starting a huge industry that still goes on today. More interestingly to me though, as I stated before, skins have already existed as mods, and they were mostly free. However, Gabe found a way to make them monetizable.
This fucking image is beautiful!
And he did it in a really clever way. If you think about it, this is basically a money printing machine for Valve.
Yeah.
Skins themselves are infinite. The items are just automatically created whenever someone opens a case. And Valve
artificial scarcity
to keep the stock going. Besides that, the money involved in this system are going only in one direction, straight to Valve. If you deposit money to Steam, you cannot officially get them out of there. Whatever you do, you are limited to Steam. You either sell it on the marketplace with money going into your Steam wallet, where you cannot withdraw. You can also trade it
There are plenty of ways to do
for
so.
other items, and in the end, the most you can do with that money is buy some kind of game, again on Steam. You could of course have a deal with someone that when you give them an item, they pay you in real life, and you also have websites dedicated to that. But in general, not many people actually get their money back to their pockets. Chances are, they will be staying in the Steam system forever. Don't forget that Steam also takes a 15% commission on every deal made on the marketplace. Valve hasn't been a game development company for a very long time now. Their biggest achievement is Steam and everything coming out of it.
When was their last game? When did Half-Life Alyx come out? What year was that? (2020). Dota 2's years before that. Dota 2 will be in here somewhere, probably. I don't know, maybe not. Dota 2 2013, yeah. Oh, right, Deadlock. I forgot about that one. Right, yeah, they did make Deadlock, didn't they? Technically not released, so, yeah.
You could stop at this point, of course, but here comes, in my opinion, the craziest part of the video and Gabe's career. I'll first have to mention the Steam Deck and Valve Index, their own VR
Steam
system.
Deck.
While they're not anything truly revolutionary, as portable consoles and VR systems have existed for a long time before these two were made, but they clearly show how Gabe operates. He is constantly exploring different paths in the gaming industry, trying to find both short-term...
Yeah, this is why I'm very worried about what's going to happen with Valve after Gabe either steps down or dies. I don't think they're going to change in some weird direction. But I don't know if they're going to have the same level of thought in just fucking around and trying things out.
Successes and long-term ones. Steam Deck, for example, was made on the hype of Nintendo Switch, but offering the Steam's library and even more instead of just the Nintendo games, which obviously turned out to be a success. Valve Index, though, is a tad more interesting, I believe. While we could argue it also was made on the hype of VR, I disagree with that. VR doesn't have that huge of a player base compared to handheld consoles, and in general is a very questionable form of gaming, with some people liking it and others preferring to stay gaming on the regular systems. I see Valve Index as a Gabe's experiment, to see how much potential the new ways of interacting with games can actually have. In the end, it's much more clear when you test it on something you are familiar with, rather than trying to understand it by looking at already existent VR games and systems. Valve Index did have a couple of simple games made for it, however, the biggest one was of course Half-Life Alyx. It's arguably the biggest game ever made exclusively for VR, and
it looks
particularly
fucking amazing.
Index. And it was the first Half-Life game since 2007. Gabe basically used the same trick he used for Steam, forcing people to get their VR system. However, I don't think that Gabe is trying to make a bet on VR, like he did with Steam and online game distribution. I'd be actually surprised if Valve did anything as big as Half-Life Alyx again for VR, but I do see a much bigger and interesting reason to do such an experiment. You see, Gaben isn't a person that you can find a lot of information about on the internet. There are a couple of interviews on YouTube, mostly from a decade ago, but recent news about him are pretty rare. However, 4 years ago there was an interview done by IGN. They asked him general questions about Valve, their goals, Half-Life and all that jazz.
He's just fucking chilling.
They asked him general...
He's like, yeah, I control the entire PC gaming industry. Yeah, that's me.
Questions about Valve, their goals, Half-Life and all that jazz. But the most interesting part there was Gabe mentioning brain-computer interfaces. He said that this is the topic he spends most of his free time exploring and studying. In simpler terms, he's exploring possibilities of catching brain signals or, perhaps, even creating them. For example, imagine playing some game and feeling the cold of a winter biome. Literally feeling it. Or the most...
Is Gabe gonna be the reason we get Sword Art Online? Is that... Jesus fucking Christ. Okay.
Most common example used in sci-fi movies, imagine UIs that you just see in front of your eyes, sort of similar to what we achieve with augmented reality and devices like Apple Pro Vision. But for this one you just see it with your eyes directly, like it actually exists. Gabe stated that explaining this stuff is like explaining internet to somebody who has never used internet. When you use it yourself, it's quite easy to understand why it exists and how it can be helpful. But to understand all the benefits and opportunities without using it is very difficult. The same applies to brain-computer interfaces. We can't really understand what it is yet. More interestingly though, Gabe said this when discussing it.
I think that it's an extinction level event for every entertainment form that's not thinking about this. If you're in the entertainment business and you're not thinking about this, you're going to be thinking about it a lot more in the future.
What if Gabe is
Now
John
we can't
Titor?
know what exactly Gabe is planning to do with this technology, or when
Sword Art
he's
Online!
going to do it. Will it even be connected to Valve's games or be something separate? But the fact that he's already so deep into this is mind-blowing to me. We haven't even grasped VR and AR fully yet, but Gabe is already thinking about the next level of experiencing and consuming content. I'd assume that VR is an in-between step before this technology will start to appear in our lives. Now imagine what kind of information and analytics Gaben has after producing his very own VR system and also having produced a whole standalone game for it. 2Clicks Philip, a YouTube creator I watch
love
and the guy
2Clicks.
through whom I found this interview, made a very interesting point, which in my opinion might be very close to the truth. Gaben doesn't say anything specific in terms of what he's going to do with this technology, but looking back at his whole career, we can notice that Gabe somewhat follows a concept that I personally really like. There's a quote that goes like this: "When everybody is digging for gold, it's good to be in the pick and shovel business." Let's apply this here. Steam is a platform for game developers. Gabe makes money from allowing developers to try their luck and sell games on his platform. Steam Deck is a platform
Literally
for games.
a money printer.
Valve Index is a platform for games. And 2Clicks Philip is making a guess that Gabe Newell has similar plans for the brain-computer technologies, creating some sort of platform that would allow people develop something for it, or perhaps it could be a device itself that lets people access the technology,
I don't know.
or some other sort of a platform. But a platform, rather than a simple game as some of us might think. And this definitely would be in Gabe's fashion. A lot of people said the same thing in the comments under the interview. Gabe is living 15 years into the future, and the more I learn about his career, the more I actually
there you
believe it.
go. This guy gets it.
You could see it as a joke, but I really think it's just the truth. While other companies are trying to compete in the gaming industry by creating games, new ways to earn money through microtransactions or whatever else, Gaben is already competing with the future itself. He is competing at technologies that don't even really exist yet. I won't even be surprised if Gabe eventually becomes one of the richest people in the world with this technology. In the end, it is crucial for the entertainment industry. It's the next logical step for its evolution, as the literal fields is probably the only thing we haven't yet achieved. Gabe really is a visionary. The way he implements his ideas into reality, the way he uses tools he already has to test new ideas, the way he manages to monetize them, he was always a genius. And in my opinion,
Guna gamers be
an
damned.
underrated
Man,
one. Once
it's
again,
not. Look, if you think Guna games are bad now, just wait until you have SAO. Just wait until you can actually fuck a cat girl. What a world you're gonna live in.
there isn't that much information on him. And for most of us, he's just the guy who created Half-Life, brought Dota and CS to us, and also the guy who owns our pockets during every Steam sale.
Steam
But
sale's
no one
fucking
really
amazing.
dives deep into his personality. This man is responsible for bringing games to Windows, for creating Windows in the first place, for making Steam, for adding skins, for setting a path for games
Look,
with Half-Life.
okay, you gotta have some L's along the way. There's gotta be at least one L in your career, sure.
And he's just a few steps away from possibly controlling the whole entertainment industry. The reason I made this video is to shine some light on the impact he had on the whole world.
You can't spell Gabe Newell without at least an L.
I was pretty close to the end of my presentation anyhow. And I just want to thank everybody here for the award. And especially I wanted to thank my wife, Lisa, for being here tonight and for being here for all those years. So,
That's a fantastic
good luck
video.
figuring it out, and
cat girls, huh? We love cat girls. Yes, I am a cat girl enjoyer.